Yeah, so my name is Amanda DoAmaral. I'm the founder and CEO of Fiveable. And so what we're building at Fiveable is a social learning platform for high school students, really right now geared towards AP exams and supporting students in studying and being able to understand all the content that's necessary to pass. I was a teacher, so I taught for 5 years in Oakland, taught mostly AP classes, and so basically what I'm building now is just because of my experience in the classroom and some of the success that I had. I really wanted to be able to scale that so that all students can experience that. In terms of challenges, I think we've had like figuring out a business model for this has definitely been a challenge. It's ed tech is a weird space because the students who need it the most can't pay for it, and the schools that need it the most can't pay for it. And schools in general are like bureaucratic fortresses, and they're impossible to understand and like tap into. So we've mostly been operating outside of that. I think a lot of what we've built has been very grassroots, from like organic growth and like just direct to student and teacher subscriptions. I even realized, like, as a teacher, that if something was cheap enough, I would just buy it and not ask my school for it because they were never going to buy it anyways. So just knowing what it's like as a teacher and what it's like as a student, I have really tried to build a business model that can support what's actually happening and not what we want to be happening. And also trying to build something that like my students could have afforded, that I could have afforded. That, you know, when I was in high school, like my mom was, it was tough. And so I don't want to develop something that I would have like priced, you know, me out of.
Right.
So we've just been kind of balancing a lot. It's like figuring out the right price, figuring out how often to charge, who to charge. You know, that question of like, who is your customer is not super straightforward for us because there's a lot of different people. There's a lot of stakeholders. There's students, there's teachers, there's parents, there's administrators. So kind of dealing with all of that, we've had to kind of make try different things and, you know, make certain assumptions, and then you try it over here and then you try to figure out if that was right. But ultimately what we know is that we want to serve students first. That's what was important to me in my classroom, and that's what's important to me now. So the business model we've developed is really like student friendly because it allows students to sign up without waiting for their school to do it. We also wanted to make sure that students are the customer that we're serving. Right. Because, you know, as long as like every product decision that we make needs to best serve students. And when you start sitting in rooms with administrators trying to sell districts or schools, you're not selling to the student anymore. And now you're developing what the school wants, which isn't even always what teachers want.
Right.
So keeping the students first is what teachers want. That's what we want. That's what students want. And I've just kind of always been sort of like the rebel that is operating outside of the boundaries of like bureaucracy. So that's just kind of how I've continued.
That's fantastic. So we have kids in our household. We've been dealing with the education system all the way from, you know, pre-K up through high school now.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that you're talking about totally resonates. We watch our teachers year after year at every school we've had kids in. They're out there buying stuff out of their own pocket every year. And I totally get when you're talking about the administrative fortress that is, you know, an individual school, much less the school system.
Right.
Super challenging. And you're a startup for you. How do you weigh those pros and cons? Like, well, do we charge them 99 cents and then, you know, I live in my car? Or do we charge them $1.99 and I can eat once a day, right?
Yeah, it's hard. I think what we've done is like tried to create different, you know, right now we just have like a $5 a month option.
Okay.
And it's really low. It's meant to be a low barrier of entry for students. And so now we're sort of developing out some higher tiers of pricing. So the way that we've sort of gone about it is that students are really diverse in all aspects, including like what they can afford, what their parents are willing to pay. And so if we can create different options, that means that we can then meet the needs of any student. So we're always going to have a free option because we don't want to shut kids out. So, you know, if a kid doesn't want to pay or can't pay, then they can still access certain pieces of content. Right. And then we can kind of move up from there. So eventually we'll develop, you know, the highest tier for students who are able to and want the most like wraparound support, and then having different options for students around, you know, throughout that. But I think like the main piece for us in terms of like we're a startup, we have costs that we're incurring, we want to grow, we want to invest in ourselves. I think that's led to my decision to even raise money in the first place. You know, like right. If I want to build a business where I'm not charging hundreds or thousands of dollars for each customer, then I'm gonna need a boost to get there. Right? Like we're gonna need to raise capital in order to build that. You know, in order even to get to a place where we can have a sustainable business at $5 a month or $15 a month, it's just going to take some time. It's going to take time to build the product, to build the content, to build the, you know, like our marketing channels. But there are enough AP students to do it, to get there. It's just going to take time to do it. So in deciding as a team that like we should raise money, that was part of the decision. It's like we just need time to be able to build things. And so raising this round is what's going to do that for us. It buys us time. It buys us, you know, product features and way more content and growth marketers. And now we have, you know, a year or so to do it, to get there. And that's kind of the goal.
You mentioned a couple of interesting points there, and I meant to square these away at the outset. So two things, if you're willing to share. How many folks is your team right now? Mm-hmm. And what has fundraising looked like to date? What sort of amounts are we talking about?
Yeah, so we have 4 people on our team right now that are all full-time. 2 developers. One is actually a like experience person. They talk about like employee experience. Like a quarter of our team is entirely focused on experience of users and of employees.
Great.
And then we have about 200 contract folks that are students and teachers who create content, who stream, who write trivia questions, who manage our like scheduling of curriculum. And that's what they do. It's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we wanted to create a whole lot of pieces of content, and I found that in the network that we've built, when I send an email out and I say I need people to write AP World content, mm-hmm. there are dozens of truly incredible students and teachers that are raising their hand, that are stepping up, that want to do it. And so we've created side gigs for them. Nice. It's like pretty wild. Like some of the students that we have writing for us are so much more talented than like any adult I've ever met. And they're like 15.
Wow. So you said 4 full-time employees.
Yeah.
You've got 200 contractors helping provide material. Mm-hmm. And what kind of a user base? What's the number of customers we're talking about?
Yeah. So our user count is almost at 40,000.
Holy smokes. 4 human beings. I'll recap for the people at home. 4 human beings on your team, 200 contractors, 40,000 users.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so we're not sleeping very much.
I would imagine not. Thanks again for making the time to do an interview.
No, it's great. It's like, I think that we're developing ways to like manage it, you know, like it's so funny. It's like, I think why I decided to be so transparent in the blog post that I wrote and why I'm going to continue to do that is because as a student, as a teacher, I never knew what happened behind the scenes of these companies. You know, like you imagine one thing and you just have no idea what it looks like. And I really wanted the students that we work with and the teachers to just like know what this looks like, what it feels like. Because I think there's a lot of, they're going to create something, you know, amazing one day too. And I want them to be able to see that this is not some like, I don't know, official, like, I don't know, like I think when you don't know what it looks like, you think that it's some like really formal environment. But it's not. It's very like grassroots. It's very like, you know, us at our home, just like writing things up and putting ideas on a whiteboard and then just deciding like, let's go with that one. And
I think everybody that my guess is that everybody who has not been in close contact with someone such as you, such an entrepreneur, is picturing you have an office of like 100, maybe 200 people, you know, a big glass towered edifice somewhere downtown in a made-here metropolitan area, right? I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm guessing that's not where you are right now.
Nope. No, we still work in our house.
In Milwaukee, right?
In Milwaukee. Shout out to Milwaukee. Of the 4 of us that work full-time, 3 of us live together and literally have carved an office space in our dining room. Right now I'm in my bedroom where I've created a little corner of a little studio that looks like, so, you know, nice official little office. It's just like, yeah, it's just so much more. I saw someone post this the other day, like another entrepreneur that I follow that I really like on Twitter. And he just talks a lot about like the moment you realize that you're like the people that you admire the most are just like real people that are just kind of doing things.
Yeah.
Is such an amazing like moment for you because then you realize like, oh, I can do that.
Right.
You know, like that's not actually like, it's hard. Of course, we're working hard and it's not easy, but it's not impossible. It's in your reach. Anyone can do this. You just like need to know that what it looks like, you know?
Yeah. Well, that, you know, everyone says representation matters, and it truly does. If everybody on a stage somewhere was straight white male, right? How many potential entrepreneurs would we be missing out on because they just, oh, I never see someone who looks like me.
Right. And that's part of the reason why we've created such a big content creator team too, because students don't see themselves in their textbooks, in learning. Like on YouTube right now, all of the big like major influencers in history videos are all white men. All of them. And they make really cool videos, but when you're a student and you're not a white male student, you're just like, okay, well, if I want to be a historian, if I want to be a chemist or whatever, like all these, I don't see myself in it. This person that wrote the textbook probably doesn't look like me. And this teacher that I have doesn't look like me. And the YouTubers that I follow don't look like me. So you start to think that like, maybe you're not supposed to be in that space. Right. You don't necessarily have the tools that you need to do it. So that's why I started recording myself, because I want, you know, young women to see themselves in me as well. I want like students of color to see themselves in me, like students that didn't have the resources that they needed to see themselves in me. And I want to have all of our content creators be able to cover a very diverse set of needs. You know, they live across the country. They're different races and ethnicities and religions and learning abilities and ages. Like they're just like a huge spectrum of creators. And I think it's really awesome for us to have a live stream or a study guide and for a student to be able to say like, wow, the person that's leading this is like me. They're gonna be much more like me. And so I think we're gonna see a lot more students succeeding because of that.
Excellent. Oh, and so it occurs to me, so a point that I wanted to raise, because years ago I sat down with my kids, and occasionally we would watch the TV show The Prophet with Marcus Lemonis.
Yeah.
They could learn some things about entrepreneur and starting companies and these sorts of things. And then for the folks following along at home, by the way, Marcus Lemonis has impacted you directly.
Yeah.
Comment on that, would you?
That was a wild day. We literally were moving from Madison to Milwaukee, like had our whole life in my car, parked outside of Summerfest, and like went in and pitched. And so I got the opportunity to be in the top 5 at Summerfest Tech, the like Great Lakes Forum competition. And Marcus was a guest judge, which was terrifying because I, walking into this room, it's not the crowd that like is scary to me. It's like who is in it, And I've seen the shows, and I was like, oh, he's gonna rip me apart. Like he's not gonna be. He even said up front at the beginning of the event, like, I'm going in on these entrepreneurs, so buckle up. And I was like, oh God, like how am I gonna defend all this? And he was just like, he was so great. Like his biggest gripe was that our market size should be bigger. That like, not that we're in the wrong space, that like we're thinking too small. And I was like, well, I'm trying to stay focused. Like, yes, we can expand to everyone, to every kid everywhere. But I'm also like, right now I'm only 4 people. So anyway, so I pitched, and I ended up coming in second place for Summerfest Tech, but Marcus really saw something in what we were building. And so he personally invested $10,000 into the company. And that was pretty incredible. I mean, it was pretty much like grant money. It was like non-dilutive. So I literally like couple days later, a week later, got a check in the mail, just like personal check from Marcus that we have framed in our like little office now.
Well, I mean, who doesn't have a check from Marcus Lemonis, though? I mean,
yeah, I was like, I'm saving this and framing it for sure.
Okay, and his money is part of how much investment has Fiveable received?
So up until by like November, I had raised about 230,000 through 2 accelerator programs that I did, Generator in Madison and Beta Boom, which was a program in Salt Lake City. And then through like the pitch competitions and one other investor that had come in. Excuse me. And then by the end of 2019, I was able to close on another $615,000 in investment. Part of that is our lead investor is Cream City Ventures, which is from Northwestern Mutual.
Yep.
And we had won the fall experiment competition in October in Milwaukee. And so that's how we were able to get the Cream City to come in as a lead. And then we've kind of built out other angels around that. And it's just a really exciting time. It was really hard to like get to that point where we had investors saying, yes, this is an investable business and I'm going to write you a check. That it was not an easy thing to get to that point, as you saw in the blog post. Yeah. And now we have resources. Now we're like just building and creating, and it's fun.
That's fantastic. So that sounds like a total of, quick math, 900,000, something like that, start to finish. Yeah. Wow. All right.
Yeah. In the last like 2 years or so. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So give me an example. I know you've alluded to this over the past few minutes, but give me an example of a people-specific issue that you've had to deal with. And I'll leave that super broad so that you open that. You can address that as you see fit.
Yeah. I mean, just generally, like building a team is hard. Like I went about it in a very unique way because I built my team to literally live with me. And like when we were at the very beginning, a little over a year ago, I was living at home with my mom, and I needed to build a team. I didn't have money to pay them. I didn't know how I was going to possibly do this. And so I took a page out of I had worked on a congressional campaign. And so I just did the same thing that they did. And I decided to rent a house and see if I could convince people to move in with me and work with me. So I wrote up a whole article and an application, and I posted it on Reddit and everywhere else I could. And I had takers. It was like crazy. And so
who would know that hey, come work at the startup and live with me?
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to see what happens. And it's the best thing that I've done. So in terms of like people challenges, my challenges have always been a lot different because we're literally living in the same place. And so we're trying to figure out, who's doing the dishes, and also like who's in charge of this piece of the startup,
Every issue that I've ever had with a roommate combined with every employment interview issue, I can only imagine what that hiring process is like. Oh, and by the okay, so I'm glad to see that you have a computer science background. Do you also store the dishes properly in the dish?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just been ups and downs with that too. Like a year ago, there was four of us who were living in the house, and two of those people like did not work out for different reasons. And so that's a massive challenge of, maybe if we hadn't been living together, it would have been better. Maybe not. I don't know. So, I have had to make tough decisions too in terms of the team that were the best thing I could do for everybody, even though it was super hard, especially in terms of living together, because for both people, it was sort of like, excuse me, I'm finally getting sick. So I know, I'm like, come on. But it's challenging because then when a team member doesn't work out, they're living in the house.
Yeah.
And so it just made it much more challenging. So.
Right. You're fired, but I still need you to pay rent.
Yeah. Or, well, it was sort of like we're going to have to part ways, which means that you need to move out. Ooh. So it was just hard. It's hard because you build close relationships with people. You're living with them, you're working with them, you're seeing each other in like the best and worst of times. And what is ultimately a business decision feels personal. And yeah. I think that's probably true in any small startup. When you have to make that call, it's really hard because you get to know people and you care about them, but you also like have to make the business decision that's best for what you're doing. And like, if that person is not part of it, then you kind of have to just like follow that. And so that was a challenge. And there was a lot of challenges around leading up to that decision, but has ultimately been for the best, I think.
Two things that I've always told people, regardless of the age of your company, the size of the company, I think if you want it to be healthy, you need to have these top priorities in this order. Mm-hmm. Number two, the needs of the people. And I'm a huge needs of the people guy. So for me to say that's only number two is a big, big deal. But number one, the needs of the business. If you don't have a company, you don't have the people.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly the order in which I was able to make the decision is, and even now in hiring, like, because now I have gone through the process of hiring some folks and of letting some folks go. Now that I'm hiring new people, I'm really trying to be as thoughtful as I can about that, because I want to make sure that the person that we bring on is a culture fit, is like fitting the needs of the business first. So like, I'm sort of like, the way I'm sort of going about even my hiring process is like, I'm talking to people to figure out, can you do the job that I need you to do to make this business work?
Yep.
But then I'm going to have the rest of my team talk to them too, to figure out, can you work well with everybody else? Exactly. Because if they don't fit both things, then it's not going to work. And I want to make sure that I am really picky in that right now, so that I don't have to have an issue later.
Absolutely. I think it's largely attributed to Reed Hastings, CEO of Netflix, as being the first person who commented on never suffer a brilliant jerk. Mm. And that's like, it's wonderful that you're top of class and you can do these great things for the company and what have you. But if everybody hates having to interact with you, we can't have you on the team.
Right. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we're like, obviously living together makes us closer, but because we're such a close team, we have to make sure that everybody can be their best selves in what we're doing.
Yep. Absolutely. So let me do this to respect your time by way of closing. So we've touched on a lot of different things here today. What's one thing we haven't talked about that you would love people to know about Fiveable?
There's so much about Fiveable. I think it's just, I think I want people that hear about Fiveable to know, what we're doing and what we care about. That like all of us on the team, whether it's the creators or the full-time people, we care so much about supporting students and making sure that they are confident in going towards like these exams right now. I even like, for me, it's like, I want kids to pass, of course, because you can get college credit, but I don't really care about the test is sort of the teacher that I've always been. And it sounds crazy, but like a kid can grow so much in taking an AP class and studying for it, even if they don't pass. A kid that gets a 1 could have grown so much more than a kid that got a 5. Yep. So even though we are Fiveable, and I want every kid to see all these exams as Fiveable, as I can do this, I don't ever want a kid to feel like if they don't pass that they've done that they're any kind of like failure, because like, so what, as adults, we know that like these AP tests don't have massive repercussions. It's nice. It's a kind of nice to have, but I just want to put kids on the right path. And so I think that's the most important thing for people to know about Fiveable, is that we're just here to make students better.
That's fantastic. That's a drop the mic. I mean, that's the closing quote right there. And also, by the way, proof of how dense I am, I even have a high school student who has been through the AP class, the test, and I just now got Fiveable. Just now.
There it is.
All right. Well, listen, Amanda, thank you so much for taking time out of a clearly busy schedule to talk to me about your company. And best of luck to you and the team at Fiveable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.